how do you buy properties interstate without a buyer's agent?
Yeah, so like obviously the next sort of thing is, all right, PK, like, okay, I get it. You need to be more wholesome in your strategy development. But I live in Sydney, I live in Melbourne. I don't want to buy in Sydney and Melbourne. It's just too expensive. I want to buy interstate, Perth, Brisbane, and regional, some other place. I don't have time. I don't want to be catching flight. I don't have that sort of appetite. I need a buyer's agent. Well, this is definitely the traditional type of thinking. However, in my own experience, like what I found, and this was an aha moment for me, and that I've now tested with thousands of people, is that there's these people that you can find, they're called property managers. Now, it might annoy someone or many people, but I sincerely think that a property manager is the most critical part of a property team. Okay. Of course, property team includes quantity surveyors, accountants, mortgage brokers, etc. But a property manager for me is the most important. The reason is, and I still think, Bushy, like 9 times out of 10 people don't know this. If I'm living here in the Gold Coast, which I am, and I want to buy in Adelaide, if I can use data to find the right location, the right sub-location within a suburb, the right street, the right property, there are numerous property managers that are happy for me to give them a call. They will inspect the property and tell me if it's worth buying from a rental due diligence perspective. So what does that mean? That means that they'll check for things like drainage, cosmetic appeal, rental appeal, whether there's housing commission nearby, etc., etc., etc. I have no idea, let's say about Adelaide. They will tell me if it's a worthwhile property to buy, not from a capital growth perspective, that's out of their remit, but rather the due diligence on the property itself and its owner-occupier appeal and its rental appeal. Okay, so that automatically gives me the local on-the-ground, boots on the ground, as it were, knowledge that I couldn't gather myself in 5 minutes or even a year because I'm not a local to Adelaide, right? And do you need a buyer's agent to do that? No, that's the property manager having done that for you. And here's a little cheeky thing. More than 5 times out of 10, national buyer's agents will use or employ the same strategy. They'll use local property managers, so you can skip the middleman, so to speak. And these property managers, are they reliable? Like, why are they doing this for free is the obvious question. Well, no one, there's no free lunch these days, but they have an incentive because if they find the right property for you, do the right due diligence, you're going to give them the management for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. All right. So that's the carrot on the stick. And therefore they'll do these inspections completely free of cost. So then the next rebuttal becomes, well, then you're saying, PK, there is some incentivization, conflict of interest. But let's think about it. Whereas with the buyer's agents, it's a transaction. They're going to get paid as soon as you settle that property. With a property manager, if they've lied, if they've overlooked something, if they've misled you, that's going to come up. Maybe not in the first year, maybe not in the second year, 5 years, 10 years from now, that property is going to bubble up with problems and you'll know who to point fingers at. So there's not a perfect alignment of interest, but it's more perfect than with a buyer's agent. And of course, goes without saying, following the property manager inspection, you get a building and pest inspector to do more of those structural solidarity checks and everything. So that 2 hurdle system, the 2 due diligence checkpoints, I've bought more than 10 properties with the same method.
Yeah, I love that. And I just reinforcing your point there, 100% agree that property managers are essential, not just managing the property long term, but in the decision making upfront and early. And there's a couple of reasons for that that are worth noting, I think. And that is that anything can look good on the desktop, but what doesn't come through with that is the local community perceptions of a particular area or precinct, which does have an influence on its property performance, both in terms of capital growth and rentability, as far as that goes. But the thing I like about property managers, and we engage exactly the same process, and I think I've said to you previously, my good wife and I owned and ran a property management business for that exact reason, is that if a property manager is talking about a property and inspects a property, they don't want the headaches either, because if it's a bad property, it's going to become a headache for them as well as you. So really good advice as far as that goes, and they are the true litmus test, both initially and ongoing as far as that goes. So beautifully said.